All right. Hi, folks. It is Wednesday at 1:30. It is Where Does It Go Wednesday, and it is time for Ask Evelyn Live. I'm so glad that you guys could join us. I am Becca Fong, and I work for Seattle Public Utilities. I am the Solid Waste Residential Outreach Planner. And I'm super glad that you guys could join us this week because, like every week, we talk about compost, recycling, garbage, and other trashy topics. And we are so excited to bring you by you questions that you guys submit. So I definitely want to remind you guys this show does not happen without you. So please make sure that you send us your questions and your comments. You can send them to us through our various social feeds. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Or you can also send them to our namesake, askevelyn@seattle.gov. So, and as every week, I am joined by our fantastic co-hosts, Pat Kaufman.
Hey, everybody. Good to see you. Pat Kaufman here. I'm the Commercial Recycling and Composting Program Manager for Seattle Public Utilities. Help businesses do their recycling and composting. So, yeah, happy to be here.
All right, Pat, I'm so good to see you. We took a week off, and hopefully everybody was able to spend a little time or send a little love to, if they have veterans in their life, it's always good to remember them in their
Absolutely.
service. So, but we are definitely glad to be back with you guys this week. I wanted to remind you guys that November, every month we do a theme. And this month for November, we are talking about waste. We're focusing on waste prevention. And that
Yeah,
just is, in general, less
right,
waste, less
right.
problems.
And then
So,
food. Always
yes,
food.
a lot of,
Love
I
the
mean,
food.
Pat, you and I are always going to be talking about food anyway, right?
Absolutely.
That's just that's just how
That's
it's going to
easy.
be. Exactly. That's a slam dunk with us. So we're going to focus on all three streams. In the past, we've talked about just compost or just recycling, but we're going to do it all. But definitely focus a little more on food, especially with this month. So one other thing before we get started this week is America Recycles Week. It kicked off with
Yeah,
Sunday, November 15th, which was America Recycles Day, which
right.
any of you fantastic watchers are probably already super savvy. And we just wanted to highlight this week with some really cool stuff to help you kind of up your recycle game, get a little more, few more tips and tricks, and, just check it out.
No,
So
in normal years, on a week like this, we would probably be handing out, several thousand of our Where Does It
yeah,
Go guides at our various outreach sites across the city. We'd be at grocery stores and at, different street corners and stuff around the city doing tabling and outreach to promote recycling. So America Recycles Day is a pretty big, it's kind of adopted by the corporate, packaging and food industry. They're really big on it. And then Keep America Beautiful, which is part of the U.S. National Recycling Coalition and the Recycling Partnership and all these sort of like industry groups. They all rally around it. It's a pretty big thing. It's nice. This is sort of the off time. There's Earth Day in April, and then there's America Recycles Day in November. So we're happy to be here this week on America's Recycle Week and promoting recycling.
absolutely. So check us out. Check out our feeds. We got some really great content up there. It's pretty fun, and we hope you guys like it. And there's a couple opportunities to send us your comments or some different ideas that you want to share with us. So without further ado, we're at the part of the show where we're going to do questions. Pat, kick us off.
Right. Okay. Question from the Ask Evelyn inbox. It says, I have been making big batches of food so I can save it for meals later. Good idea during this pandemic time. She says, I remember you discussing tips on how to save leftovers in previous episodes. Can you share some more of the meal saving options? And that was from Gwen. That's great. Well, so the idea is to really take your food production and have some forethought in mind and be prepared to package your food, and save some of it for later meals. It's pretty straightforward, but it's something that one of our program manager partners, Veronica, she focuses on that residential focused food waste prevention program.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's called Love Food, Stop Waste, and we'll
That's
definitely
right.
have links to lots of awesome resources that are there. They're super colorful. I was trying to find my food storage guide. I couldn't find it earlier, but we'll definitely have a link to that in the
Oh,
notes.
yeah, I should have grabbed mine. Yeah. No,
That's
that
okay.
is a great guide. Full
It
color,
is.
multiple pages. You can look at it online. She's got a great web page with all the graphics. You can kind of zoom in on different port. There's there's different tips for different parts of the fridge. The
Yeah.
whole different sections of the fridge and then different, techniques of like shouldn't store your onions next to your potatoes. It'll make those things ripe too fast or things like that. So there's a lot of great tips in that booklet.
Yeah, there's some fantastic stuff. And
Yeah,
to Gwen's question, I was kind of thinking the best way to think about it is if you're making a big batch of whatever you're making, there's kind of
right.
two options. There's a short-term option, which you're probably looking at your refrigerator, something you're going to eat generally
Hmm.
within a week. Even though Pat and I will eat food on the edges, I think a week is safe. Um,
Yes.
if you've made too much, or your household or you don't want to eat the same thing for 7 days or multiple times in a week, then you're going to look at your freezer. So for some fridge tips, Pat, you've got some really good fridge tips.
Well, I mean, this is the basics of the having the eat first section, of leftovers. So that's my when I think of fridge tips, that's my number one.
Yeah,
But in this
gotta be
meal
visible.
planning, yeah, that's right, and meal portion stuff, it's really just packaging it in the meal sizes. I mean, it's
Right.
using your containers that you maybe hopefully already have in your cupboard somewhere. Those little containers that where you can just snap, close, something using those reusable containers when possible that you already have in your kitchen for these
Totally. Like I have
portions.
these that I use
Yeah.
quite a bit that are about, this is like an old salsa
Oh,
container.
perfect.
And then this is like a to-go food soup
Yes.
container. These are really nice because, well, one, they're clear, which is nice. They don't have to be. I'll sometimes put tape or a piece of paper on the
Yeah.
front and date it
Label it.
because I won't remember how long it's been in there.
Right.
And
Right.
sometimes my family doesn't trust me where I'm like, it's fine, just go ahead and eat that. They're like, but these are really great, and these are about the right size too. Like you can prepackage some lunch portions, or you can put the whole meal together in there and then just dump that onto a plate and warm it up. So
Yeah. I mean, just move it into the Thanksgiving holiday too. This is a big. There's gonna be a lot of this going on out there.
yes, yeah,
People are kind of used to making the usual size of the side dishes. I mean, it's kind of exciting to think about,
I know.
Thanksgiving meal and having all the yams and the stuffing and the different like the classic dishes that people make. So I think it's exciting. I'm really looking forward to Thanksgiving this year, and I don't
Yeah.
think like when we go into our recipe box and we pull out grandma's recipe for baked yams or something, we're going to do the full on. We're not going to portion it down, even though there's only three of us in our household. We're going to make the one that we would usually bring to Thanksgiving for a dozen or more people, and then so I'm going to get to have these portion sized leftovers for like a week or so. It's going to be great.
Totally. No, it's fantastic. And I mean, let's be honest, like I will make an entire tray of dressing, but I could probably eat most of that
Yes.
myself. I probably shouldn't, but
Right.
this is a good
Right.
reason to kind of portion it out. I think another thing to think about, Gwen, is that you can also look at your freezer. I think dating it and writing down what
Yeah.
it is
Oh,
super important when you're putting up any kind of food, your fridge, your freezer, because it's really my short-term memory, especially nowadays, there's so many things to think about, is really terrible. So you want to take the
yeah.
guesswork out of that.
And it's
And
I don't know what it is about food, Becca, but it bothers me when I get to a point where I put that food in the fridge or the freezer and it's just not appetizing. Like I don't really want to eat it anymore. It's like a stressor for me. So I think dating it is a good idea. Like
yeah,
best by, because that can
totally.
give your own best by date.
Yeah,
Like think, okay, I'm gonna freeze this, but you know what? I know if I leave it in there for more than a month, I probably won't want to eat it. So put a best by 3 weeks from now, and then you'll just get back to it and you'll have it as part of a meal. Some evening in the future.
absolutely.
So
We were talking to some other folks too about kind of their tips and tricks, right?
yeah,
And one of them said, to put reminders for things that go in a freezer. Like I have a really
right.
big freezer, and stuff gets a little bit lost in the bottom of the freezer.
Yes.
So they suggested putting a reminder, right? Like in 3 months, right? Like go back and check on your food, which I actually decided to do for a lot of the vegetables that I froze using the freezer storage guide that we'll link to.
Yeah.
So there's some
There's
great options.
some people are like long range freezer users, and I'm more of a short term freezer user. I don't like to like freeze it for a long. I know there's
Okay.
no difference. Once it's frozen, it's frozen. Like it doesn't know
It's
if it's
true.
next week or next year. But there's just something about like whether it seems like it's going to be appetizer. Like I feel like thawing something a couple of weeks from when I made it is like it's still got the yumminess to it or something. I don't know. Anyway, point
Well,
is,
and I think it's a good point, though. I mean, I think that everybody, however you manage your leftovers or your portions, a lot of it is understanding like how you will perceive the
yes,
food, because
that's what
that's
I'm
the
trying to
whole
say.
point, right? Like if you're going to eat it, whatever tips and tricks work for you,
Right.
you want to make sure that you follow those, because there's nothing sadder than putting your heart and soul into making something, and whether it goes bad in the fridge or goes bad in the freezer, having it go bad is really sad. You
And
know,
this is the season to bring that game up, folks, like really kind of be you know, intentional about how you put your food in the fridge or the freezer, because these are great meals. These are great dishes. These are, you know, a lot of times, like I say, they're the kind of grandma's recipe kind of thing. So you want to care for your food even more during this time of year. And plus the fact that, you know, there just isn't a lot of food out there for others in the community. So you want to, if you got food in your household that, you know, you want to take care of, it's just a good way to be responsible about your food, I think, you know.
Absolutely. And I did want to go back to Thanksgiving because I know you and I are really excited about
Yes.
Thanksgiving. And you know, it's such a great way to bring people together. And I think that this year more than anything, it is, I mean, to be honest, it's sad, right? Like I am going to miss everybody so dearly to be able to have them all come together. And, you know, you and I were talking about this. It's like having people go down the line, you get one scoop, you're all kind of waiting and you're all going to sit down and share this meal together. I think that, you know, Gwen's question really brought up that this is maybe a good time to, you know, kind of join up with some friends, and maybe one of you makes the dressing, one of you makes the yams, one of you makes the turkey. I know I'm going to reach out to a couple of my neighbors who either live alone or just in a couple to see if I can share some of that with them. And maybe they want to make something that's special to them. And we can, again, bust out our kind of reusable containers.
That's right.
And share those portions with them. And it brings a little bit of that togetherness of the season. It doesn't replace it, but it just creates a little bit more connection that I know that I, you know, am definitely missing this year and would like to figure out how to do in any little way. And it cuts down on food waste. So how's that getting you, like, 100%, right?
I agree. It hits me on so many good points. It's great. And I think it's the show right now, the Wednesday before the Wednesday before. So we're people got time to get their game on, you know, like you can start, like if you empty a cottage cheese tonight or tomorrow, don't recycle that container. Set it aside because you might want to give that, you know, have a little portion. A one-way container is what I'm talking about. Like this whole pandemic thing of like, oh, here's my casserole dish. I'm going to need that back though. And so it's better to just try and do some one-way deliveries, you know, leave it on the doorstep, knock, and, you know, maybe call them or whatever. But the idea of I think we're going to hear more of this through the media too. I think that, you know, the media and people are going to share on the radio and stuff, stories about how they're going to make part of the meal at their house, and then there'll be a trade of like dishes and because of the you know, you still want to have an experience around the holiday, even if you're just going to be with your own household, you know. You still want to...
absolutely. It's how you spread the love and how you show a little bit of thanks and a little bit of giving. So
right
absolutely.
And recycling always has a place, you know. It's always fits, you know, no matter what you're doing, you've always got a chance to be thoughtful and careful about this stuff.
Absolutely. So Gwen, thank you for your question. It really you know, was really great. It covered a lot of ground, and we're going to have a lot of the links to a lot of the resources that are going to help kind of keep things top of mind. Because, you know, some of these topics we go over a couple of times from different angles, but, you know, it's hard to remember, right? And so that's what we're definitely here for. Like, please write into us if you guys have questions, and we're happy to answer them. So,
and if you're watching and you haven't previously checked the show notes, the links, there's loads of resources there. This show is going to be a good one for having a lot of good links for this, you know, food waste prevention tips and guides and things.
Totally. All right. So thanks again, Gwen. Keep writing in, folks.
Right.
All right. So question 2 is still kind of about food a little bit. So this one comes to us from Ana Maria, and she wrote in and said, hi, Evelyn. I'm cleaning out my pantry, and I've got a lot of plastic bags and pouches from things like oatmeal, flour, beans, cereal. And is any of this recyclable, and how can I tell? So this is a question that we get a lot. And we are definitely happy to dive deep because it is really confusing. Like, plastic packaging is probably the #1 thing we hear about, questions about recyclability. So Pat, you had kind of a good prop to kind of kick us off, which is a really common thing we're going to find.
You know, the classic flour bag, right? It's paper. It's probably going to poop all over you. But, you know, it's a totally paper thing.
Right.
You can rip it. It's paper. When you're done with it, you know, if it's empty, you can recycle it, or you can compost it. It has a little flour down in the corners.
Right.
So paper's great. You know, it's a very thoughtful, you know, it gives us the ability to take the packaging and keep it into a closed loop system, either the natural system of compost or the technical system of recycling. But as we all know, there's not a lot of flour showing up these days.
Yeah.
If you're buying a special type of flour or just normal flour, sometimes it's coming in these plastic pouches with the little, which is cool. I don't have to use the little clamp on here because it comes with its own, I can't even know if I can get it open, its own Velcro, closure inside. I mean, it's awesome, right? Performance-wise, but totally not recyclable. This is a garbage item. This is a one direction, single use, end of story, garbage item. It's a pouch, and there's a lot of pouches in the marketplace now. You may have some samples too. I have the oatmeal containers as well.
I
It's
have
just
some coffee.
pouches these are multi-material layered.
Right.
It's not just one kind of plastic, folks. It's like they have a layer that is built for the preserving the freshness of the food. They have a layer that is built for the strength of the pouch. They have a layer that's built to hold the label. They have a layer that protects the label. I mean, it's like it's crazy, the layering that goes on. But, to their credit, you're getting longer shelf life, better shelf life even after you open it, and like with that resealing top that comes with a lot of them. And the pack in the box is like they're able to fit more pouches in a case than the traditional kind of shape sensitive versions that took up a certain amount of space. So, I don't want to hog the time on pouches here. I know you have some ideas and strategies too, but, we buy pouches because we want the product. I don't want the pouch, I want the product. So anytime there's a product that is an option of a pouch or a paper container or a jar or something, depending on cost and such, all these things are factors as consumers. I like to try and buy things that are recyclable if possible.
Yeah, recyclable or reusable. I'm with you as well. I mean, we talk a lot about for the determining the recyclability of things. It kind of depends on two things: sortation, so how well you can sort it at the MRF, and then if there's an end market. So if there is a place for somebody to buy that material once it's sorted at the MRF and turn it into something else, right? And so unfortunately, a lot of these flexible packaging things, like I've got kind of this, plastic noodle wrapper, and my tortilla bag, like this stuff is really hard to sort because it's super flexible. Even if there was a good end market for it, which there is not, these are really hard to sort. It's too flexible. It'll wrap around the machinery, which is why we do not take plastic film in the commingled cart anymore. That's why we stopped doing it at the beginning of this year, is that it's just too hard to sort. That's something to think about. And, Anna Maria, I hear you. I mean, you're looking at all this stuff and you're like, okay, I would love to be able to not just put it in the trash, but sometimes that's the best place for it. You did bring up a really important point, Pat, that I wanted to get back to really quickly, is that, those pouches are the reason that a lot of manufacturers are going to those is certainly shelf life, performance, all of those things. But they also use less materials when they're making them than maybe making a paperboard box with a plastic liner in it, or like a metal can. A lot of things used to come in metal cans with plastic tops. So these are using a lot less resources. And, we don't have all the details. We haven't done a study on this, but you guys, those of you watching, may be interested and, may want to dive a little bit deeper on figuring out, is it better to have a flexible package even if at end of life it gets disposed of, because it has less environmental impact on the production and transportation on the front end? So I just kind of wanted to acknowledge that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to acknowledge. And it's a big equation. It's an equation that we are not prepared to provide the go-to answer for every product. But here's another visual example that I have. Same manufacturer, slightly different product. This is walnuts and peanuts, but we get our peanuts in this container because it's recyclable. A lot of peanuts come in those little foil fiber wrapped tin. They're not a tin; it's a tin bottom and a plastic top and a foil side. I mean, it's really unfortunate. But this is fully recyclable. So when you have the choice to buy something in a recyclable container, and it's a either or, and the price is not that different, I would go for the recyclable, but like you say, I mean, the manufacturers are looking for the most cost-effective way to deliver the product that you want, to the consumer. And it's going to be hard for us as recyclers. It's always the case that we're the last ones invited to the party. The planning doesn't include us usually. But I say that in jest. I mean, it's a joke because a lot of these manufacturers are very engaged in, the national sustainable packaging coalitions and things like that. So they're at the table and they're hearing us. They know that they want, we want their packaging to fit our recycle model. And the reasons you talked about, sortability and markets, that's what kind of is the parameters that we want recyclables to fit within. And these pouches are they're not in that. But I wonder you could reuse these for something. What do you think? Like,
Yeah,
you know,
I mean,
pack your kid's sandwich in it?
yeah, you can totally reuse it. And actually, we had a question come into the comments here about if QFC is a good place to drop off a lot of the softer films, and it
Okay.
absolutely is. However, those zippered pouches that Pat was showing you,
Right.
those are not accepted.
No.
It's all those layers. It's hard to, like, each of those layers are generally made out of a different type of
Right.
plastic. So you really want to make sure that you look at, is it plasticfilmrecycling.org? I
Yes.
believe is the link,
Yes.
and
We'll
I
put
will
it in
double
the
check on
show,
that.
but it
Yeah,
is. It's plasticfilmrecycling.org. And it will give you a map, will pop up, and it'll tell you in your zip code which stores are participating. And those stores, you know, normally have the bin out by where the shopping carts are stored and such, and you can put plastic film. They're really focusing on, you know, not on these pouches, not on food
no,
contact materials.
right,
They're more focused on the plastic bags,
sure.
the wrapper that came around your toilet tissue or your paper towels or something like that. So they're really focused on the plastic film, not plastic pouches. But there's some crossover materials out there. There's all the details are on those websites. They
Yeah.
definitely have partnerships with a lot of manufacturers.
Yeah, great question. And that does get
Yeah.
around the sortation. And when it's
Right.
separated like that, there are stronger markets for it. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why a lot of drop off locations are better choices. So
Right.
great question. Thanks for putting that in the
Great
comments.
question. Yeah.
All right. So now we're at the point in our show where we talk about our weekly waste challenge.
Right.
And our challenge from the previous show was how to close the loop on compost very, very locally. We're super lucky with the system that we have that everything that goes into your food and yard waste cart gets processed in the local area in Stanwood or Everett at two of our compost processing recycling partners, which is fantastic. So
Mm-hmm.
it's staying very local anyway, but we wanted
Yeah.
to get super, super local. And so this was the challenge that we had. And so Pat, you had a couple of things.
Well, this was like the throwback challenge to the 1990s, like before curbside compost was really as heavily present. So, you know, it's just leaves. Rake your leaves back in your beds and let the nutrients from the leaves break down back into the soil. This whole regenerative soil conversation that's going on in a lot of industry spaces right now, of like getting the nutrients back to the soil.
Sure.
And you know, putting things in your cart, having it go in the truck, having the truck go to the facility, having the facility turn it into compost, and then you buying the product back. That's one model. You know,
Yeah.
a more simple model, like you said, hyper local, is return to composting in your backyard. And it doesn't have to be a highly technical system. You don't have to buy one of those rotating
Right.
bins on a, you know, gear driven system, something like that.
That sounds like a lot.
You can just put the leaves into one bed and let them sit there all winter. They will be great. The worms will love it. The birds will love it. Everybody's
It'll
gonna
keep
love
the
it,
weeds
you know?
down.
So just try and keep it. Look, we just rake our leaves off the lawn. You know, let the lawn breathe like it does. We also have our chickens, so we work our chicken manure back in once it's stabilized through its compost pile, which is not something I turn. I don't go out there with a fork, you know, and turn it all the time. It just sits.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I'm able to kind of scoop it out into the garden. So I think just kind of keep it local. From the challenge to me was really just try to focus on my backyard and really do what I can within my backyard. And try the green cart's great. The green cart is so convenient. It's so inviting. It's like gimme. But it's also just nice to keep your nutrients on site.
Sure, absolutely. And that was kind of the heart of the challenge, is like, how do we really close that loop? Because you can send it off, but if you have to figure out a way to use compost at your house to really close that loop. And so for me, I kind of think about, I separate my coffee grounds and my eggshells, and I put those directly into my garden.
Nice.
When I was a kid, my grandfather used to save his eggshells and coffee grounds and put them on his houseplants because he lived in an apartment. And that always just made me think, you know, on his tea leaves and things like that, it was just always kind of right there. And I just really like that reminder of like how we cannot have to use a truck and not have to send it off. If you can manage your stuff as much as you can within your own household, it's really kind of a fun challenge.
Right.
So that was kind of the things that I thought a lot about, thinking about, you know, in a house, but also in an apartment. You can also buy compost. Buying compost in the spring is also pretty important.
Yeah, well, it's really, I mean, we're kind of lucky. We've been lucky to have Cedar Grove and Lands and the companies in our region, in our area, doing the composting that they do of all of our yard waste and food waste. But some of them are making these blends, like they have potting soils and houseplant soil, like small bags. You don't have to buy the big, you know, 4 cubic foot bag of yard compost. You can buy the little bags that are really for your houseplants, just to kind of sprinkle a little on the top of your houseplants and feed them a little bit naturally from your own food waste that went through our
Yep.
own system. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. And we do have some compost giveaway events that are coming up. So
Yeah.
I'll make sure to include the link to our events page in the show notes. So we do have a couple more coming up, which is going to be pretty great. It's kind of late in the season, but it's kind of fun to be able to offer those. So
Absolutely. Still a great
absolutely.
time to amend the soil with compost, for sure.
Absolutely.
All right.
And your response to the challenge also made me think, Pat, about to remind everybody that November we offer free yard waste pickup. You can put out up to 10 bags of leaves every week, every collection day, and that is to kind of incentivize folks to rake the leaves to keep the storm drains clear. So
Yeah, I
go
don't
ahead
have
and
like
take
a
it.
massive oak. I was gonna say I don't have a massive oak tree in my backyard, folks. So I have a little pear tree. You know, I mean, it's not like I can rake my leaves into the bed and it's all good. If you have a huge tree, a lot of leaves, especially out front of the house, near the rain gutter, near the curb, it'd be great if you could rake those leaves, bag them up. You can have as many as 10 per week, right? That's
Yeah,
great.
10 per week, which is fantastic. There are some really big trees where I live, so we end up raking the gutters and the drains pretty often. So it's a really great service, and we are happy to provide that to you guys. So it's also kind of a nice break when you're tired of looking at your screen. You can go outside and take a break. So, all right. And so for next week, we are going to be talking about dealing with leftovers. Just with Thanksgiving coming up, it's a good refresher. We'll just kind of keep that going. We'll think about that. And, you know, Pat and I always want to talk about food and leftovers.
Absolutely.
So if you guys have any ideas too, go ahead and send them to us. And with that, thank you guys for joining us. Remember, it is America Recycles Week, so up your recycling game. Check us out on our various feeds, and maybe you'll learn some new stuff. I know I did, even with putting the material together. So
yeah, check out a hashtag Recycle Right or hashtag America Recycles Day, something like that. Check out some of the resources out there. A lot of companies and people are putting good info out on social media. So check it out.
Absolutely. And our partners, Recology and Waste Management, they're both hosting some cool virtual workshops this week. So definitely check out either our feed or check out theirs, and you will figure out how to sign up for those. Those are going to be really fun. So, all right, folks. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us for another episode. Definitely the highlight of my week. It's great to see all of you who joined us. And for those of you who are watching later, I'm so glad you tuned in. And remember to send us your questions because the show runs on you. So, all right. And with that, I'm Becca Fong, and we hope that you found this useful information from your utility. And remember, life is a little bit simpler with less stuff.
And I'm Pat Kaufman. Remember to recycle right. Have a good one.
All right. Take care, guys. We'll see you next week.